Nightclubs. That really helped, won't it?
And it's probably where we met.
So we had Pangea, Wax, Rex, 10 Rooms, ChinaWhite, sort of Purple, K-Bar.
Purple was a nightclub underneath Stamford Bridge Football Club.
On an average week, we were probably putting 15,000 people in venues. Yeah. Essex gangsters, South London gangsters, Jewish crews, Arab crews, footballers, rugby players, royalty, Prince Harry, Prince William.
Prince Harry, God, he used to get on it.
I always made sure News of the World snappers didn't see them. I think when you earn people's trust and people know you're that guy,
worth his weight in gold.
Absolutely. I represented the likes of Jimmy Bullard, Vinnie Jones, Neil Ruddock, John Barnes, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, John Carew.
Who was the biggest party boy out of that list you just mentioned?
I don't know.
Si, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, very much. It's funny seeing you today. I haven't seen you in 25 years, probably, plus.
20 years or so, I know, yeah, since the good old days.
Yeah. Fulham, Chelsea, Clapham.
I've certainly lost some weight. Yeah. I mean, you've lost weight as well.
I thought you were going to say you were right fat back. Anyway, let's roll our back, Si. Where did you grow up and how did you become a sports entrepreneur?
Oh, what a question. So my dad was in the army, so I had quite an eclectic sort of childhood, really. I was born in northwest Kent, in a place called Gravesend, and my dad worked on the river, so very much a working class upbringing. But probably at the age of 3 or 4, he decided he wanted something a bit more for the family, so joined the army. So that led to a crazy journey of 13 houses in about 10 years as a kid, moving around army bases around the world. And because of that, and because of that upheaval, and because of that lack of any quality education, I was sent to boarding school, and that I think is quite a big part of my sort of formative story.
What school did you go to?
Well, it's a school that's now shut down, which says a lot. Obviously, my parents thought they were doing the right thing. It's a school called Newlands in East Sussex, a place called Seaford. I don't think too far from where you went to school, actually. But it was a school that had a lot of problems, and actually really in the last couple of years, and especially during COVID, a lot more of those problems were highlighted. So it's an interesting one. I think that it was certainly part of my upbringing. As I said, my parents thought they were doing best, but a lot of the stuff that happened there probably was really more like a resilience training camp than actually an education. Yeah.
What are you saying? It was a boarding school? Was there bullying there?
Yeah, a lot of bullying, a lot of sexual abuse, very, very poor level of education. I ended up getting 6 GCSEs. So I was, my dad was spending money on this education, assuming that we were all being looked after. And as you know, back in those times, there were no mobile phones or communication. We weren't even allowed to phone our parents. We sent letters every week. So they thought it was all rosy, but actually what was happening was the school was spunking the money and not educating us. And so I was taken out of that environment after my GCSEs, and I was put in a school up in North Yorkshire. So my dad was based at Catterick Garrison, and I did my A-levels in Yorkshire, which completely changed me because I went from 6 terrible GCSEs to 3 A's at A-level, which then opened the door for me to go and do law at university. So in answer to your question, I sort of really turned my life around doing my A-levels up there. It was quite hard being a southerner, sort of sixth form college in Darlington, but got my head down and get a law degree. That led on to doing law school and then qualifying as a lawyer.
Quality. And where did you study law?
So I studied law at Kent Uni. Which is a brilliant experience, great uni, campus uni, lovely city, Canterbury, and then did law school in London. And it was one of those things where I think a lot of parents encourage their kids to go and be lawyers or doctors. And again, absolutely, they thought it was best for me. What I didn't realise that it was for me, it was the early stages of something that would end up me being a private hospital with depression, anxiety, because I qualified as a lawyer. And what I didn't realise is that's when the real work starts. And I was in that city environment. I mean, I'm 47 now, so, mid-20s, a lot of drugs and alcohol about, crazy working hours. There was no mental health then. It was sort of, we'd get into the office at 8, leave at 2 in the morning. And that was just a cycle. It was a cycle. And I just didn't have the ability to keep up with that. And as I said, unfortunately, one day I sort of collapsed in a heap.
Hi guys, just giving you the quick heads up. We've just launched a new VIP membership on Patreon. This gives you exclusive episodes, behind the scenes footage never seen before, VIP community chat, and early access to all episodes. If you love what we do, for the sake of a cheeky pint a month, £5 a month, come and support the channel. It allows us to grow even bigger. Did you? At work?
Well, not so much at work. I actually, I kept pushing and pushing and pushing and thinking that I'd eventually get through it. But what I didn't realise was that I was actually very, very ill mentally. I kept going to a GP who, bless him, thought I had an iron deficiency. So I kept getting prescribed iron tablets, and surprise, surprise, it wasn't helping my mental health. So
how old were you? How old were you at this time? This must be early 90s, mid 90s, is it?
Yeah. No, this would have been early 2000s.
Early 2000s.
Yeah, no, 2000 to 2002. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So it was a tough thing to happen. Obviously, at the time, not something you'd really talk about or share. I think, thankfully, I was a day patient at the hospital. It was a brilliant hospital called the Capio Nightingale in London. Was going in there every day. Completely lost touch with all my friends, though. Obviously, lost touch with where I was working, and just lived this strange existence. I had a one-bed flat in Shepherd's Bush. So, looking back now, it was a pretty dark chapter. Yeah. But actually, I do look back now with a sort of wry smile, because it is definitely the foundation and the launch pad for who I am today.
And where did you get, when you left the world of law after that, when you said, I don't want to be a lawyer now, what was the next step for you? Well,
funny enough, nightclubs. That really helped, won't it?
And that's probably where we met.
Yeah, it is where we met. So it was an interesting one. I had the pleasure of meeting a chap called Martin Afire on a night out in Fulham. And Martin at the time was just finishing his rugby career at Wasps, and both of us were going through breakups, and I ended up moving in with Martin in Chiswick. And on a night out, you'll remember this, Embassy back in the day, Martin introduced me to a young man called Nick House.
Is Nick House still going in the nightclub world?
He's not going in the nightclub world. He's a restaurateur now.
Is he?
But Nick was, like yourself, was sort of top of the game. I think you were doing more club stuff around the country.
That's right, yeah.
Nick had London parties and sort of the high-end London scene boxed off. And Nick and I got on. He was building this business called London Parties. He had contracts at about 22 clubs in London.
Every week?
Every week. We were doing, over 20 parties a week in London. And he needed people like me, who I probably were quite well connected, a bit sort of lost in the capital, and didn't, mind a night out. So I found myself running 3 or 4 nights. My sort of patch was Southwest London, so I was doing sort of Purple, K-Bar.
Purple, yeah. Remember Purple?
Well, Purple was my Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Mate, I used to love Purple.
Yeah, so
Purple, just for the listener out there, Purple was a nightclub underneath Stamford Bridge Football Club, and that's when we used to party there in the early 2000s. And then Roman Abramovich bought it, and he stopped the nightclub.
Yeah, it's still a venue now. They still a venue, match day hospitality.
Oh, do they? Because I thought they said, because we used to pile in there, all of us, must be 1,000 people every Friday, Saturday night. That was our go-to, wasn't it?
Well, we had Thursday, Friday, Saturdays. We put 1,500 on Friday and Saturday, and about 800 on Thursday. That was a student night, and it was incredible. But you know the model. We were taking the door money, and the club were keeping the bar money. Yeah, and so
that's a good model, by the way.
It was a great model, but it doesn't exist anymore. No, but I think we earned that, and we earned that keep, because ultimately the operators didn't really know anybody.
Yeah.
We had hundreds of people working as sub-promoters underneath us. So, yeah, it was an amazing time, and got to meet some brilliant people. And to be fair, a lot of the people I met in that environment are still friends today. And what it did do is it led my next step on my journey was to become a sports agent, because I actually ended up marrying my knowledge from being a lawyer with all the professional footballers and rugby players that I met in those clubs. Yeah. And the next thing I was a lawyer.
Yeah. Just before we go into that, I'm fascinated, because you've just triggered my mind. What other clubs did you do? What other clubs you do that you can mention here in the year 2000?
Yeah, goodness. We had Pangea.
Pangea, oh my God.
Wednesday nights at Pangea, brilliant night. Kensington Roof Gardens, Friday and Saturday.
Lovely venue.
Saturdays.
What was the other one?
Café de Paris.
Cafe. I love Café de Paris. That's got to be one of the best looking venues in the country, right?
It's still a venue now, isn't it? It's been open since the 30s.
That's right.
Brilliant venue.
Leicester Square? Or is it?
Yes, it's on that Coventry Street between Leicester Square and Piccadilly Circus. Yeah, cracking place. I mean, amazing. I mean, I can't walk around London anymore without shedding a tear, because they're all still there.
Yeah.
Wax, Rex, Souk on Teatro, Funky Buddha. Where else? Obviously, K-Bar, 10 Rooms, ChinaWhite. I mean, there were so many. As I said, we had so many venues on the go.
ChinaWhite on a Wednesday, I think.
ChinaWhite was a big night. That wasn't our night. We used to have a Saturday there.
Was it? Wednesday was a big night.
Wednesday was their sort of flagship night.
That's right.
But you got to remember back then there was no real social media, so we were putting on an average week we were probably putting 15,000 people in venues.
Yeah.
And taking cash off the door.
Yeah.
So I mean that led
like
to
proper cash, not like so anyone listening out there. There was cash back then where you could take it.
Yeah, but you can imagine that led to its own problems.
Yeah,
us, lads in our mid-20s walking around West End at 3 a.m. with that much cash, and it got quite hairy, to be honest. And it was one of those things that I think we were so naive. We were sort of, I think the doormen and all the security, and even the heavies in London. Just were like, these are just a bunch of sort of public school boys.
Yeah,
They're not that, and so we did there were a few occasions where, we'd get followed home and we didn't really have any muscle. So there were a couple of occasions at one club, which I won't mention, but where the doormen were basically just taking the money and they were just going down the queue asking me 50 quid, 20 quid, and the people going in the front. And so we started noticing that our door revenue was down, hundreds of thousands each week. And we just called the head of security up on it. He said, well, what are you going to do about it, mate?
Yeah.
Well, I can't do anything, really. So carry on. So, it was interesting.
Quality. Give me some more clubs.
Oh.
Can you think of any more clubs?
I mean, I think...
I want to trigger. What about Sunday night PMP and...
Well, so that was obviously...
Kings Road, was it? Or Fulham Road?
Well, Kings Road, we had Mamalangi.
Yeah.
Remember that was open for a while?
Yeah. Embargo,
Crazy Larry's. I mean, all those places. And I think hardly any of them are open now.
No.
But it was very different, wasn't it? Because I think back then it was still very much a drinking culture, party culture. There was absolutely no messaging around not drinking or
everyone was just getting on it.
Everyone was smoking in venues.
Everyone was just getting on it. Everything.
On it. And it was like
the consumption decade, wasn't it?
But also there was no social media, so if you wanted to hang out with people, you had to go out. You couldn't do it on your phone at home over WhatsApp or anything. So no, fond memories. But I think obviously going for an environment where I wasn't very well into that had a shelf life. Was I met some brilliant people, and as I said, some of the people that became clients later in life, footballers, rugby players, and even people like Prince Harry, Prince William, who I used to spend a lot of time with. Whenever Harry wanted to go out, I basically met household security. And so I would get the call, take him to a club, get him in the back door. And so it was an amazing time and fond memories. But it's...
Prince Harry, God, he used to get on it.
Good times.
He's great times. He used to properly get on it though, didn't he? Remember who was the guy in Purple Nightclub? James. Was it James?
Yeah, he's no longer with us.
I've heard he passed. How did he die?
He passed. So he, I think it was I actually went to his funeral.
Did you?
So his father, Brian Mason, owned Purple.
That's right.
And the Mason family, quite a well-known family in Fulham. Yeah, so I worked with James's family for 3 years, and it was probably I think it was around 2014 that he passed, but it was of a brain hemorrhage. And really, really sad. But that, again, quite a really iconic Fulham family.
Yeah. And who was the other guy there? Because he used to run it, James. And he had long blonde hair, if I remember right.
Yeah, that was James.
Yeah, that's right. 20 odd years ago, I remember him there. Who was his bodyguard? He had a black bodyguard, Big James. He's dead as well, isn't he? He got shot.
Yeah, he died. Yeah. So
where did he get shot? Around the nightclub world? Or?
No, he got shot at the. There's a bar opposite Fulham Broadway station that's now a Thai restaurant. I can't remember. And he got shot. It was crazy, actually. It was the year the smoking ban came out. And he asked someone to put a cigarette out in the pub, and the bloke went out, came back with a gun and shot and killed him. Oh. Yeah, and that's Fulham, and that was a real sort of that sort of thing doesn't happen in Fulham. I mean, not then or now, and so. Yeah, that was a sort of time when that happened. I mean, I was already out of the nightclub game, but...
He was a lovely fella.
He was.
He was the kindest... Was he 6'6" black guys? Big.
He was a British Commonwealth boxing champion.
That's right.
But he was always in the club. And do you know what was amazing about that scene back then was there was never any trouble. I didn't see one... I mean, there was obviously the punch-up, but never one glassing knife, nothing like that. No gangs. And what we used to pride ourselves on, especially in the West End, we'd have... some of those ChinaWhite or Pangaea nights, we'd have Essex gangsters, South London gangsters, Jewish crews, Arab crews, footballers, rugby players, royalty, no bother.
Everyone blends.
Yeah. My job as a promoter would go around, make sure everyone had something in common, be a great night out and nothing. Whereas now, I mean, goodness knows what happens.
Well, the clubs aren't around. There's no nightclubs anymore.
No, well, obviously you speak about it a lot, don't you? It's sad, but yeah, good memories.
Really good memories. I think you were the guys who are sort of like the pioneers, really, of bringing that smaller venue style, but bottles of vodka, bottles of champagne, where people would go, right, 10 grand down, there's your table.
Yeah. And that started to limit us, because what happened was our revenue was always on the door.
Yeah.
And obviously if someone's dropping 10 grand, they don't want to pay to get in. So we had these 200, 300 person venues where we would put these really high rollers in, but then we weren't taking money. And so we started asking the bar for a percentage of the bar. And that's when it started getting dodgy, because they would give us fake bar receipts. And so we'd be monitoring, we'd say, right, we want 10% of the bar. They'd give us a reading at the start of the night, reading at the end, and we'd see it's been manipulated. Yeah. So
just lose
the moment
trust.
you can't walk away from the club of your cash,
that's right.
We were like, nah. And so, you know, I eventually left that business. Nick carried on for a few years. He ended up buying Whiskey Mist. And
did he own Whiskey Mist? Did he?
Whiskey Mist. And
that's a boozer.
Yeah. No, the club under Park Lane Hilton.
Okay, yeah.
But he also had shares in a pub.
In a pub, yeah. What was the name of that pub?
That pub was in Mayfair, and it was with Guy Ritchie.
That's right.
And a chap called Rupert Morgan used to run it, and the name escapes me, but it's a great pub in the back streets of Mayfair.
That was a good pub.
Yeah, but everyone just sort of slowly sort of fell away from that scene. And
do you think that people? So, what year did you kind of get out of the nightclub world?
Nightclub world properly got out in around 2008.
Yeah, so I left in 2008.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did 10 years.
Interesting.
I had 12 nightclubs every week, like peak, all around the country from Manchester, Birmingham.
Well, I remember you a great role was Ollie Horner.
Ollie Horner, what a lovely bloke.
Yeah, come play.
Come play, that's right.
So Ollie's still a very good friend of mine. He's godfather to my son.
Is he?
And yeah, we're really close.
Nice fellow, Ollie.
Really nice. He's just launched a premium gin brand, actually.
Didn't he launch a popcorn brand or something?
Hippies.
Or hippie. Oh,
yeah, healthy chickpea snack.
Chickpeas, that's
doing
right.
really well with another promoter from our days. So again,
Really?
it's really nice to see ex-club promoters. I think if you were switched on in that environment and you had a bit about you, you were polite and didn't fall too much into drink and drugs. I think a lot of those people have come out of it like yourself and done very well, because you think the number of people you used to meet.
Oh, mate.
Now, any 25 to 30-year-old, when do you ever get to meet 400 people a week?
Yeah.
You just don't.
Plus.
It's impossible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny, though. I see people now our age, sort of mid-40s or 40s or whatever they are, and they're still at it.
Yeah.
And they look like 60. I'm like, mate, but then when you finish like school or university, the culture was you get smashed.
Yeah,
that was the culture.
Yeah,
doesn't matter what it says at the moment. In that late 90s and 2000s, people were just on it. Maybe on a Wednesday or Saturday, even would go out on a Sunday.
Yeah,
and that period, 10-year period, I was in clubs probably 6 or 7 nights a week for 10 years.
Same,
4 nights a week working, and then when you get back to London after doing all the clubs around the country, you're out Friday, Saturday, and then you got a P&P on a Sunday.
Yeah. But wasn't it great? Because I just don't have FOMO now.
No,
I feel like I've lived every possible experience of going out. Nothing, no invite is of interest.
Yeah.
I can say no to everything. I can pick and choose. Whereas I do still have mates now who weren't giving it a nudge because they got married quite early.
Yeah.
So now their kids are grown up.
They're trying to,
mate, what are you doing? Of course I'm not going out. I don't go out.
Yeah. But do you remember P&P though? All the rugby boys and all the rugby, all the wives Sunday and girlfriends Sunday night. And that's when vodka Red Bull come about. Remember like jugs of vodka Red Bull and blokes were just...
It was amazing though. It was great. I just don't see those. I mean, what's happened now is they have these day parties, don't they? Which I've never been to, or brunch parties.
Yeah.
It's sort of actually is quite interesting because it means I could probably get home for a curry in bed.
Yeah, exactly. After an all dayer, perfect.
But I know the mentality of most of the people I hang out with. It just means that they'd still go out till silly o'clock. It just meant they've been on it for longer.
Yeah.
So
what did you take from that nightclub world? Going from boarding school, being moved around everywhere with your dad. It's hard to make friends when you can't settle. To then all of a sudden, did you feel like you had a community then? Did you feel like you were actually a face or someone and actually you were recognised for the first time? Absolutely.
That's a really good point, because I think what my upheaval as a youngster going around loads of army schools, moving home, I had the ability very quickly to make friends. Yeah. I could be put in any playground and very quickly find something in common with people. And I think even then going to boarding school and uni, that was a skill I had. So actually, I didn't know it. As a promoter, that's one of the best possible skills, because I could walk into any club. I'd have no problem going up to people, finding something in common with them, exchanging numbers as you did back then, and building a network. And as you know, in that world, and even in what we do now, it's all about who you know. So that was one of the most amazing things the club game gave me. But most importantly, and probably the skill I've used the most after that, is sales. Yeah. Like, you think about it, we used to convince, as I said, 15,000 people a week to spend loads of money in a dark black room with a bit of music on. Yeah. That's what we did. And it was proper sales. We didn't really have sales assets like you do now. There weren't fancy videos or there was the odd photo, but it was usually blurred on a sort of club website. But
basically flyers
we'd have
and
to tell
posters
people
and
what was happening. And, you know, that's quite hard. And there was no social media. It was phone calls. There was nowhere to hide. There was no post and hope people turn up. It was down at Fulham Broadway giving out flyers.
Flyering and posting.
Calling people and motivating that person. If you
to
bring
generate
20 people, I'll give you this. And so again, it was weird. At the time, I just didn't realise. At the time, it was just, I was stuck in a bit of a sort of cycle in London of having a good time, you know, with the boys, with freshman sportsmen, meeting women. And I was lucky because I didn't take it too far. But again, as I said earlier, I could see how people could and not take the lessons out of it. Yeah.
What contacts did you meet in the nightclub world that you have worked with post nightclub world?
Great question. Lots. I mean, I was very fortunate. As I said earlier, I managed to take my skills from being a lawyer and lots of professional sportsmen I met to become an agent, sports agent. So I built a business which I represented the likes of Jimmy Bullard, Vinnie Jones, Neil Ruddock, John Barnes, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, John Carew, Ledley King, Nick Easter, Lawrence Delalio. So what I found was that I was because I met a lot of these guys when they were smashed, and I was looking after them.
It's true, isn't it?
I was looking after them.
And you were straight and sober.
I was straight. I always made sure the News of the World snappers didn't see them. I made sure they got out their fire escape in their cars and home. So I looked after them a lot of the time in the most vulnerable environments. And so I think that built up a level of trust. So then when they had a question, you know, so their present agent was doing this, doing that, they'd ask me, and they knew I was a lawyer. So that's really how that developed. And you know, I think you said at the start, I've been very blessed to work in sport, post-law my whole, you know, for the last 20 years. That has been the foundation. And that's led on to, I'm sure I'll come on to it, building and selling an advertising agency in sport, still having a talent management business. But I think when you earn people's trust and, you know, on a handshake and people know you're that guy, that's a pretty good foundation.
Worth his weight in gold.
Absolutely.
Who was the biggest party boy out of that list you just mentioned?
Well, I mean, Lawrence wasn't too far to stop. Sorry, Lowell. Jimmy Bullard gave it a fair nudge occasionally. Neil Ruddock wasn't too bad. It's funny, actually. A lot of the people I represented were quite big party heads, actually.
There's a theme going
on. Yeah. But no, I think what was brilliant as well is that the mentality of those guys, we're not talking about footballers that were knocking around League Two. These were all winners. And so...
And England World Cup winners.
And World Cup winners, Championship winners, title winners, England international. So they were work hard, play hard. And I was very lucky back then, around 2002, 2005, to have a front row seat to the sort of success that London Wasps had. To this day, I look after Warren Gatland now, the Wales head coach, and just seeing him with Sean Edwards look after that group of players with Lawrence, Josh, you know, Fraser Walters, Stuart Abbott, Danny Cipriani, Haskell. Such a band of brothers that they were winning titles, European Cups, but they were going out. They were out. And that for me was a really interesting lesson on work hard, play hard. Obviously, a lot of people get that wrong, but yeah, I'm very proud of a lot of the sportsmen I represented. They weren't just going out; they were winning things first.
Yeah, I used to have a nightclub in Wandsworth called Liquid.
No way.
Do you know the one-way system?
Yeah, of course.
And it was a student night every single Tuesday, and it was all the Roehampton students, 1,000 students. It was like 70% women. And every Tuesday night we'd have all the Wasp boys, all the London Irish and all the Quins boys turning up. They'd all done like half a bottle of vodka before they turn up, come in there, get smashed and go to training the next morning.
I mean, the stories. I've dropped people off from nights out straight to training.
Yeah.
But again,
that's just the way it was, wasn't it?
Different world then.
Yeah. I've got a funny story. I won't say about when Brian O'Driscoll in the club and
really?
Yeah, some funny Pete Richards.
Pete Richards, what a lad he was.
Yeah,
great
lad. Lovely fella. I got some. Now you've mentioned, I've got loads of funny stories. I'm not going to mention it on podcast here, but can have a chat about it off air.
Yeah, definitely.
Anyway,
I've got some of those stories.
Yeah, I'm sure you have as well. These are bringing back great memories. It's like 20 years ago. Yeah, fantastic. What was so when you finished the nightclub world? How old are you roughly?
Finished nightclub world probably 28. So early 30s.
Early 30s.
Mid 30s to early 30s. Yeah. So
how was your mind?
I was, as I mentioned earlier, I'd come through the mental health challenges after the legal profession. And as we said, like what we know now is that lack of sleep isn't great. So going straight into a night, and by the way, no one told you that back then, and maybe I should have known that. But so going into a profession that operates at night, you sort of live a parallel universe to a lot of people. So I lost touch with all my old uni mates, all my real friends, I suppose. Yeah. You move into quite a transit society, and you start to become aware the more you mature that a lot of people they're your friend because you can get them in places. Yeah. No shit, yeah. Right? So there was a strange process where, as I came out of that profession, the phone stopped ringing, and that's not great for self-esteem. And you start to sort of realize that actually they weren't friends; they were there for the ride, which is fair enough, right? I was the sort of gatekeeper to that ride, so it's come to expect that. But that took a bit of adjustment, and probably a few years where I was really questioning that whole decade of my 20s and early 30s, what I've been doing, and starting to feel sort of, I guess, inner pressure and guilt about, letting myself down, letting my family down. And it wasn't really until, to be honest, I met my now wife in 2012 that things started to come together, and that the sort of coming together of appreciation of wellness, fitness, and my running, meeting Lucy, who's now my wife, who was 14 years younger than me, which was a huge, massive thing.
14 years younger.
Yeah. Well, that's why I had to get fit.
I'm just trying
I've lost all the weight.
I'm just trying to think. When did you meet her? You didn't meet. No. You didn't meet her when you were 29,
no,
did you?
She was 21.
I'm so good.
Yeah, but it's fair. We watched the wedding with the other day. I looked terrible.
Oh, really?
I looked awful. I thought I looked great.
Yeah.
I was like, oh God, you married him.
Yeah, fair play to you, mate. So what? So what was your world then? Were you thinking, right, I want to become a sports agent. I want to look after these players and get commercial deals on and off the pitch.
Yeah, that was it. And I think I was. I could see a real future in that. I'd built a small business that I'd sold to a company called Raw. A guy called Jonathan Shallett, who's quite a well-known agent, bought my business.
What business was that?
It's called Raw Global.
Which was?
Then it's now called Talent. So it's a talent management business.
Talent, okay.
Yeah. So I went in. That's where Lucy was working.
Yeah.
She was working as a theatrical agent. And that was around the London Olympics. So it was a really cool time in London. Was it 2012?
Brilliant.
Bit of a bounce. I met my now wife. And yeah, I really saw a future in talent management. And fast forward a year, 2 years, fell out with Jonathan.
Jonathan who?
Shallett, the person who bought my business.
Okay. Well, you go 50-50, did you?
Yeah, but it was talent is quite a hard business to build and sell because it's about the relationships and people move on. Yeah. So yeah, that was a sort of interesting time. I learned a lot, but then I suppose the biggest business decision stroke moment for me was in 2015. Lawrence Delalio had been invited into an advertising agency in Soho called BBH. And he asked me if I could come in and help launch this sports division for them. And I knew nothing about advertising agencies, creative agencies, brand strategy, but they wanted me to open some doors for them. So I was like, look, I'll come in. I still want to manage my talent on the side. They were like, no problem. And that was my first experience in advertising. And I helped them for 2 years, between 2014, 2016. And that's when I had a sort of light bulb moment to set up my own sports focused advertising agency. And I did that in 2016 and we sold it last year to Omnicom.
Did you?
Yeah. So it was quite an interesting journey, but I built it from 0 to 65 employees. We were doing brand strategy, creative for the likes of Nissan, we launched Peloton in the UK, Puma, Just Eat, some big brands. But, I like to think of that was a bringing together of everything I'd learned, all the contacts I'd built. Obviously, I'd had no experience in advertising. So what I did was basically I surrounded myself with people that knew a lot more than me.
Yep.
I always refer to it as standing on the shoulder of giants. So I basically gave shares to 4 of the most influential and powerful people in advertising. They worked at an agency called Lucky Generals. So I shared
their agency was called
Lucky Generals.
Okay.
Really great advertising agency. And yeah, we built this business called Dark Horses, it was a brilliant brand and ethos because it was all about.
So your agency was called Dark Horses.
Yeah.
Okay, and you built that an advertising agency from 2016 and sold it when?
Last year.
Wow. How much did you sell it for?
Can't tell exactly. We're still in the earn out, but it was.
You're in the earn out. Okay.
Yeah, it was a good sum of money, but I mean, obviously COVID had
an impact as well.
Say.
Yeah.
I stood down as the CEO in 2020. Basically, I just didn't have so when COVID hit, we were about 60 employees.
That's a lot of employees, by the way. Yeah, 60.
Well, listen, and this is
that's a lot of pressure.
This is why I stood down, and this is why it was a really sort of fascinating time, because I'd built a business from nothing, right? Flying, everyone doing well, 60 employees. I knew nothing about being a CEO. I'm an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And so I was sort of building this moving car, I always like to say. And people were coming in, we're winning business, we're taking people to Miami, to, Italy on team holidays. We're doing everything because we're working in sport, Champions League finals. It's brilliant. And then suddenly 2020, COVID hits, and you've got the average age of the workforce was probably about 25. And I was, early 40s, mid 40s. So suddenly it's not going so well. And suddenly I have no tools in my tool bag to deal with the situation. Well, nobody did really, did they? And so it went from happy, friendly to sort of furloughing people, cutting people's pay. And I just didn't really have that skill set. Okay. I was it was always great because in the office, I was walking around. I was always a part of conversations. I was effectively the new business driver. But when there was no new business to win, and we were all on our screens, suddenly I wasn't being invited to any meetings. I wasn't present in any meetings. I couldn't put my head in the door to look at what was going on. No one was giving out any business. So I was a bit like, fuck, what am I doing? Like, what's my role? And so the insecurities started building up. And basically I called it probably end of that first year of COVID. And again, which is a very, very hard and challenging time, but it led to us leaving Shepherd's Bush, moving down to East Sussex. And I would never have done that if I was still the CEO of the agency. I couldn't have done that.
You'll still be there now, grafting. Just break down what an advertising agency actually means for the listener. So from 2016 to 2023, you built this business. You had a 2-3 year period, which obviously was COVID, which wasn't cool. How are you earning your money to build up a team of 65 staff?
So we worked for brands that wanted to use sport to elevate their brand. So basically big brands who sponsor sports events need that relationship bringing to life in some way. So more often than not now it's through social media content, but we were very much known as above the line stuff. So we'd make TV adverts, out of home advertising. So you see on billboards, print ads in magazines. We'd also do social content, but we'd do the quite big strategic thinking. So our relationships were with the CMOs and the CEOs. So
the chief marketing officer
and the chief executive. So we were quite far up the sort of the food chain. And as I said, our biggest client was Nissan. And even to this day, Nissan is our biggest client. So most of what Nissan do in sports, so they have a Formula E team, sponsor City Football Group. They used to sponsor the ICC and they used to sponsor Champions League. Okay. Every piece of marketing that they made would come out of Dark Horses. Okay. So we were massively punching above our weight. Yeah. And what's great is that the ethos with the business was always about being the underdog, being a dark horse. And it was really interesting that when we chose a name, people were like, why Dark Horse?
Now you've mentioned it, I love it.
It's a fucking cool name.
It's a wicked name.
I was like, well, look, I'm a dark horse. I'm not from this industry. I'm going to take people by surprise. And by the way, we want to work with dark horses because dark horses and challenger brands are brave. Yeah. And you want to work with brave CEOs and CMOs because they'll make work that's famous. They don't just want to make wallpaper. Yeah. And so we just had this really incredible sort of group of people that embraced the dark horses ideology. We fucking smashed it, man. Yeah. Like we really smashed it. And I'm very, very proud of that. And I think, again, going back to that sort of thing we spoke about when you leave the club world, when I stood down as a CEO, I potted off to East Sussex and the phone stopped ringing. I was off the company emails. You're sort of like, now what? I'm 46. I'm never built to be an employee. I'm an entrepreneur, so I need to be busy. Yeah. So it's like, what next?
Give me an example of a brand you work with, what they would pay, and would they do a 3-year deal, a 2-year deal? Question. They want you to cover TV, right? The TV advertise. Just give us a good picture.
So Peloton is a brand everyone will know. Yeah. When we met them, we didn't know them. Nobody knew them. And this is a true story and a fascinating story. The founder was a guy called John Foley, and we had an office in Farringdon, Exmouth Market, and he flew in and we went through a pitch process to become the agency to launch them in Europe. So they had an agency in New York called Mechanism doing Manhattan, launched in New York, came over, met us, and he walked into our office. Bear in mind, this is 2018. Walks in, I lean over to shake his hand. He goes like this, sticks his elbow out. I'm like, he said, "Oh, there's too many airborne diseases being passed around by handshakes." So bear in mind 2018. I'm like,
2 years before. Yeah.
I'm like, okay. He's then walking around the office, elbowing everyone. I'm like, the fuck is going on? Fast forward to the brand that benefited from COVID the most.
That's right.
Anyway, we were doing their UK launch, and they had a huge budget, and they wanted to.
How much?
They probably had £1 million for creative.
Okay.
And so they probably had $750,000 for creative, about £1 million for production, so to make the thing, and then probably about 15 million on media.
So you're telling me they gave you that money to do that, or did they give you a certain chunk?
So we'd get $750,000
up front, or paid, or was it paid monthly? How would it be paid?
Up front or paid monthly?
Okay.
Yeah. We'd then the production, we'd manage that, but that's what we then use to make. That's a hard cost to production agency to make the TV ad, and then the media is what they spend to get the world to see it. So, for example, the TV.
Yeah. So you can't hide behind that. So you'd have to say to them, okay, the media want 50 grand an advert. You'd have to pass that on, or would you put your money?
We wouldn't take any.
You wouldn't take that. You'd take the money out of the creative stuff. Okay.
Creative strategy, 750. So we'd make it. We'd engage a production company. They'd shoot it, and then it'd be passed on to media to make it famous. So it was brilliant because with a brand like that, we just knew straight away this was going to work. It was such a great time. They had so much money. They had so much money behind them. It was such a cool product. And then, of course, as we just said, when sort of COVID hit, it was like, fuck me, at home fitness just blew up. It was really good working with brands like that because they were, as we said, they were dark horse. They were disruptors. They wanted to make a difference. It was slightly more challenging when we'd have to work, where we worked with certain, I won't name them, certain sort of governing bodies or rights holders within sport because they didn't have much money.
Yeah.
They didn't want to upset anyone.
Yeah.
They had certain parameters and rules you had to stick within. So you end up
jumping through hoops.
We'd come up with some amazing ideas and they'd chip away. And 2 months later, you just make what they want to make.
Yeah.
And you've started here with this brilliant idea to break through, make them famous. Yeah. But because of, they just wallpaper.
So when you built that business, Dark Horses, who was the shareholder? You?
Yeah, so myself, the 3 founders of Lucky Generals. So they were the people that, as I said, standing on the shoulder of giants. They were the people with the expertise in advertising.
And was it you who said, I want to bring people in as shares? And was it you who saying, it's my company set up here, I've got 100% here, I want to split these shares up?
Yes, well, so to the way we launched it, and this is great advice for any of your listeners, is that I knew to get off the ground, I didn't want to get investment, external cash. Yeah. So I went to them and said, look, you've got this staff already working here. You've got these offices. You've got that reception, these services. I want to come in here. I want that desk. I want to borrow your staff. You cross-charge me for those staff. I'll pay for them. I want that receptionist. I'll share all that. And as I grow, I'll take more desks, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, and that's what happened. We built it. So eventually we knocked through to the office next door. That was my office. They were there. And what was the reason I massively benefited is that when I was one person trying to get new clients in, I'd bring them to the office. And you know what it's like when you're trying to win business. If you've got a fucking cool office with energy, people love it. Yeah. So I was bringing people through the Lucky General's office into Dark Horse's office, sort of a bit of smoke and mirrors, a few more people because no one wants to work at an agency with one person working in it. So a few of their staff around my office. And then that was that really. I hugely benefited, and I'd go as far to say it wouldn't have happened without the halo effect of Lucky Generals.
Yeah, but also wouldn't have happened without your mindset to go, you know what, I'm going to bring some really cool people on board. What percent did you keep?
By the time
at the start.
Oh, at the start, I was on about 30%.
You gave away
the majority.
Mr. 70%, kept 30. Yeah. And when you come to sell, what percent did you go down to?
About 12.5.
Okay.
Yeah. So I diluted a lot, but actually we wouldn't have sold if I hadn't done it. So it was sort of, it worked out well. And I think it's funny because I'm having lots of conversations as a non-exec of a lot of companies, and I'm not doing a very good job of articulating to people it's better to have a percentage of something than 100% of nothing. And I'm trying to get that message. And I use Dark Horse as an example, but I think there's a mentality of ego. I think there's power, which is such a bad starting point.
Yeah.
you know.
I think you did. I think you were clever. That was a clever move.
Yeah. Well, it turned out that way, and there was a lot of luck along the way.
But the more risks you take, the luckier you get.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my mindset. A lot of people say the harder you work, the luckier you get. I'm not a big believer of that. I think the more risks you take, the luckier you get.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I'm sort of in this place at the moment where I'm looking at what's next, and I think that risk taking, I don't even regard it as risk taking. What you and I regard as a sort of normal course of events, I think a lot of people regard as risk taking.
Yeah.
I think that sort of schooling in nightclubs, I wouldn't say I'm resistant or resilient to failure, but I don't really give a shit what people think anymore.
Yeah.
And I probably haven't for about 5-10 years. So actually, sometimes when I think a lot of people choose or decide to launch a business, the reason they don't is because they worry what people think.
Yeah.
I couldn't give a shit.
Yeah, I'm the same. I've
Good,
always felt like
it's
that.
liberating, isn't it? But I didn't. I think I did, and that, you know, that's probably what got me quite ill as a lawyer, because I was so concerned of what other people thought. Whereas I almost have to remind myself, and almost sometimes have to pretend I care, because otherwise people think you're a sociopath.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you talk about risk there. Like I was chatting yesterday on a podcast. I got invited to James Sinclair's podcast.
Oh yeah,
so I went up there.
Guy.
Yeah, really impressive guy.
I really like him.
It was nice being on the other side for the first time rather than hosting. And we're talking about risk, and he's a risk taker. But he's like, "What risk you take?" I said, "Well, just put you. We gambled our family home and put it on a festival in a field." He was like, "You what?" Do you know what I mean? So I
know you did that.
Yeah,
That's
so it's crazy, really. But I mentor other people now, and what I will say to them: take calculated risk. But I didn't take calculated risk back then. You know, it was a full-on risk. Like if no one turned up, you lose your house. It's as simple as that, because people wouldn't buy online back then. There was no social media. People wouldn't buy tickets online. It was literally waiting for people to turn up, and you've just gambled and risked, remortgaged it and gambled it for 300 grand in a field. Yeah,
but I think as well, you and I both know, if you've done the reps, it's not really risk. Like I'm incredibly confident in business, in endurance sport now. In most things I do, I'm quite confident, because I know I get up at 5, I read every day, I train every day, I do business every day, I look after my family every day. Like I'm on it, and so I back myself. Like, and if it's a 100-mile running race, I fail in, or if it's a business failure, I'm like, well, I couldn't have done any more. I'm totally bulletproof.
Yeah, good for you, man.
Yes,
you look well.
Yeah, it's a bit of running.
You look well, mate. You look really clean.
Thank you. I kind of, alcohol I've drunk once this year. I'm not a non-drinker or anti-drinking. I drink. I go to football. I've had one drink this year. I train every day.
Yeah.
I've got into ultra marathons, endurance marathons. So I'm probably doing, on average, 100 miles a week running.
100 miles a week?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Good hell.
That's right.
What do you listen to?
Podcast. Your podcast, mate.
You got me in the ear when running. Jesus
Too many
Christ.
Podcasts. Yeah. I mean, I do this. I sometimes get home after, I try and do my long runs on a Sunday, which sometimes turn out to be 6-hour runs. And
a 6-hour run? Yeah. For fun?
Yeah.
Do you get excited by going for a run for 6 hours?
I love it, mate. Honestly, I don't know what the gene is, but it never used to be there. This is a new thing, but since 2018, I've been running ultra marathons, and I've stumbled into a talentless sport, which is brilliant. You just need to put your shoes on and move.
Yeah. When you launched this business, Dark Horse, you were in it for 6-7 years, 8 years, or whatever it may be. Give me some examples of some amazing events that you went to.
Wow. Sport as in events with work and clients. Yeah. Well, Champions League final.
Who?
I mean, unfortunately, I'm a Spurs fan. So it was, the stars really aligned in 2019 as Tottenham got to Champions League final.
Yeah.
Nissan were a client. We'd done all of Nissan's work leading up to it. Obviously got to go to the incredible course final at the Etihad when we won 4-3. Then saw the comeback in Amsterdam, which was insane.
Yeah. What was the Amsterdam one?
We beat Ajax. Remember, we scored 3 goals in the second half.
In the second half?
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Don't put we into that. Like full on West Ham, mate. Don't bring me into that Tottenham world.
I was at the game the other night, actually. But yeah, and so, it was, wow, this is a real moment as I got my sort of Champions League final. All my mates to get tickets.
Where was the final?
Madrid.
Was it?
So I got picked up in a Nissan Leaf at the airport. I was just like, this is
Nissan Sunny.
Yeah, I was just like, this is it. Work, life, everything. And obviously, Liverpool get a penalty in the second minute, and then we just didn't turn up. Yeah. So that as an event was just brilliant. The whole theatre. I obviously never thought I would, and probably never think I will see Tottenham in the Champions League final again. No. So that was incredible. 2019 again, the same summer. the Cricket World Cup final at Lords.
Yeah.
We saw the incredible semi-final when England beat the final, beat New Zealand.
New Zealand in the final, wasn't it?
Yeah, so we were there for
extra
that.
over, wasn't it?
Yeah, Nissan was sponsored that.
Was
so got
it?
to go to that. What else? Yeah, we went to the Champions League final in Kiev. So just incredible events like that, it's funny when you're a proper diehard fan, it sometimes can be quite strange going to the events as a corporate. I mean, I'm not anti-corporate. Obviously, corporate makes football go round. I get it.
Yeah.
But sometimes you sort of, the old prawn sandwich brigade, you turn your nose at. But of course, there is a market for that and there's a need for that. And they're the people that fund the sport. So, of course, they need to be looked after.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, incredible times.
Do you remember a good mate of mine, Alex Anderson?
Of course.
Yeah.
Al, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much
Al,
so.
What a legend he is.
Yeah, really good guy.
And the reason why I say that, like we grew up as kids all the way through. Went to
Right.
school together and
Yeah, I knew in school.
and then he's the most well-travelled human being I know.
Good work.
He's the most well-connected person in sport.
Yeah.
He has been to more finals and more games in Miami and more games in Japan and more games in Hong Kong and Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah.
He puts on Man United versus Liverpool in
Brazil as well. Brazil.
He puts Brazil against Argentina
All
and
Blacks.
America. He has lived like 3 lives of travelling and putting on the most amazing events.
Yeah.
And I want to get him on here.
I really get him on.
Yes.
I mean, he has seen, as you said, the world. I think it's...
And no one knows.
Yeah.
Because he's not a social media person.
No.
He's never been on a podcast. He's like a social butterfly who floats around and turns up everywhere. And he'd be having lunch with Alex Ferguson. Then he'd be having dinner with Zinedine Zidane. Like, it's mad.
Yeah, he does incredibly well. And he's got a very good business now. I think he's broken a lot of big international fixtures.
That's right.
So I think he's got the rights for Brazil's friendly
with Bart
fixtures.
Campbell.
Yeah, that's right. And
He's
I think
a
he
great
does
guy.
a lot of the All Blacks friendlies.
Yeah, he did. But they put on Bart. Bart's a really good guy, by the way. Got a lot of time for him. Bart and Alex and his company called TG, is it? Or there's another, I can't remember what company put it on. I think it might be TG. They put on New Zealand, South Africa on a Friday night.
That's right. Twickenham.
At Twickers.
Yeah.
82,000
Sold
people.
out, I know.
The next day England played.
Yeah.
I think it was 40,000.
That's right, yeah.
How embarrassing.
I'll actually invite you to that. But
How embarrassing is that?
I know. But they're promoters. They know what they're doing.
Yeah, but my point is, your home ground, England couldn't pack out on a Saturday afternoon and they packed out full of Kiwis and Saffers on a Friday night.
Well, South Africa playing there in June. They're playing Wales in June there, which is, it's a sign of the times, isn't it? Sort of, and it's going to happen more and more, I think.
Yeah. Tell me your relationship with Lowell.
Yeah, Lawrence is a very good friend of mine. As I say, we first met back in, it would have been probably just turn of, the millennium. He was captain of Wasps. I was, in and out of nightclubs, promoting nightclubs. We built a friendship. He then obviously went to Rugby World Cup, won the World Cup, which is incredible. And just stayed in touch. And as I said, back in 2014, he invited me to be part of BBH Sport, which is my first sort of experience with a creative agency. Stayed in touch after that. And then I'm now, last year I ran the Marathon des Sables for his charity, which is called Delalia Rugby Works. Yeah. And this year I'm running a 400-kilometre race over 6 days in Wales called the Dragon's Back Race with charity. So Lawrence's charity, Delalia Rugby Works, brilliant charity. Its premise is it helps children that have been, or youths that have been excluded from mainstream education. Okay. So there's an alarming statistic that 75% of children that are expelled from school end up in the prison system. Yeah. And that isn't because they're necessarily bad people. Youths get expelled from school now. The biggest reason is non-attendance. Yeah. And a lot of that non-attendance is because they're the victim of bullying. Yeah. So what's happening is the victims of bullying on social media don't go to school. Yeah. They then get expelled. Yeah. They then get excluded. They then can't get an education. And then these are the people that are ending up in the prison system, which is horrific. Yeah. So Lawrence's charity, they've got lots of sites. They're big tour in South Wales.
He's done very well for his charity, hasn't he?
Do you know what?
Great guy.
He's actually in Italy at the moment doing his biannual cycle slam, which has got, I think it's 10 days raising money. But he raises hundreds of thousands of pounds for his charity. And he doesn't, make a song or dance about it. And I'm really proud to call him a mate. And also, as I said, that he's had a lot of adversity in his life.
He has,
and I think just seeing how someone like that has managed to, not only lead a rugby club, but lead a family.
Captain your country.
Captain your country.
Just
won a World Cup.
Just captain your country.
But by the way, when they won the World Cup, it was again like this sort of thing that this is going to happen again. This is normal.
Yeah,
that probably won't happen again.
Yeah, agree.
We took it for granted because they're our mates.
Yeah.
I know you were mates with some of them. And we were in the pub in Fulham with them.
That's right.
And then 25 years.
Yeah, still
later,
nothing.
No, can't be 25 years.
But we've had 2 finals since then. 21 years.
2003.
21 years.
Yeah,
21 years.
Yeah.
I think we've been in 2 finals since then.
Yeah.
I went to the other final when they got in 2007 in Paris against South Africa.
South Africa final, isn't it? That was actually another dark horses trip. We went to Yokohama, to the semi-final against New Zealand.
Oh, in Japan. I went out there. You were there?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Who was I? I went out there and watched Japan. There was a typhoon coming.
Yes, at the start of the tournament, wasn't it?
And I was like,
Scotland, wasn't it?
No, it was the typhoon coming. It was England, France on a Friday night. And they said, Japanese, we all piled out there. The Japanese like, there's a typhoon coming. I was like, well, there's a typhoon. It sounds awful, but what is it? I knew it was going to be windy. But it was literally, we're in the hotel and it was shaking.
Yeah.
And that game got cancelled that night.
That's right.
And the next day, we were all like, pleased, because we're only have to. It was Japan versus Scotland.
Yeah.
And at 11 o'clock in the morning, they said, right, it's on. They cleared all the pitches away because the debris and a load of people died the night before, etc. And then the Japanese national anthem come on, and we were there taken there by Heineken, I think, in the middle. Japanese national anthem come on, and the place erupted. Tears. Really? Every man was crying. It was unbelievable. And then Japan went and beat the Jocks.
Yeah. I was very fortunate to go to the semis that tournament. That was brilliant. Great tournament. What a city as well. Well, what a country. I mean, I'd never been. I was only there for 48 hours. I mean, I'd definitely go back. It reminded me a bit. It's like being in year 4000. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's like there's no off switch.
When you get a cab, no one speaks English. So I was speaking into Siri, going, "Oh mate, can you tell them to take us to local booze?" And then it goes into Japanese. Like no one spoke English.
Japan is like the size of Tokyo is like the size of Southeast England. So I was like, "No, we'll get a cab." Like, mate, it's a 2 hour,
2.5 hour later to get to the game.
Like, oh right, but that's why they put the bullet train.
Yeah. Amazing. Great experience that was Japan World Cup. What were you around when Lowell got stung, the cocaine sting? Was that in any of your clubs?
That was because that actually happened in South Africa. So that was he was on a Lions tour and just got set up by, I can't remember the publication.
News of the World.
It was probably the News of the World.
Well, there's no one else.
Yeah, I was going to say News of the World because they don't exist now anyway. It was the News of the World. I actually met him just after that. And again, proper setup, horrible job. And I think he ended up captaining the country again, but not for another sort of 10 years after that. But he was stripped of the captaincy.
That's
and then
right.
It was off the back of that. Jono had it until winning the World Cup.
Yeah.
But I think what happened was as well, he was very much kept as a lieutenant by Clive, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I think it was, as much as Jono was the captain, it certainly felt like it was a Clive, Jono and Lawrence, sort of the three of them.
Powerful. Jesus Christ, powerful.
But
that three together.
Don't make it like that anymore.
No, they don't. They don't. I want to roll back a little bit further what you're speaking again. You said you went into business with Jonathan. How did that business break up and how did you deal with that?
Yeah. Didn't break up in the best of ways, to be honest. So as I said, I'd signed the likes of John Barnes, Chris Kamara, Jimmy Bullard, Vinnie Jones. Vinnie Jones was our biggest client. I was back and forth in LA with Vinnie, and it was a brilliant time. Like I wasn't looking after his film stuff, but I was doing a lot of his brand and corporate stuff.
So you say you were looking after Vinnie Jones. Give me let's break that down. What do you mean you were looking after?
Yeah, so he had a manager, great guy in LA called Alex Cole, and I would source commercial opportunities for Vinnie, both in the States, mainly in the UK. And basically, if you ever saw Vinnie on a TV advert in the UK, I'd have gone out, found that deal, brokered that deal, and I'd have earned a commission on that deal. Yeah. And so I was doing quite a lot of Vinnie. And funny enough, I actually went on a holiday to Jamaica in February.
Just gone?
Sorry?
What, just gone?
No.
Back then. Okay, yeah.
It was February 2014 and with my now wife. And whilst I was on holiday in Jamaica, my phone just started going off. And it was my client saying, "Oh, Simon, I think you should come home. Jonathan has been calling me saying that you're leaving the company." I was like, "Excuse me, am I?" Go to my bank, check my bank, haven't been paid. Called Jonathan, like, "John, what's going on?" No answer, left messages. Anyway, turns out that he had decided in my absence that he was basically unilaterally terminating my contract. stopped paying me, and was basically going to try and just move me out of the company or reduce my pay and keep my clients. So what he had slightly misjudged, and we've made up for it now, and I've seen him quite recently, but at the time you're on holiday, you're spewing. What he had massively underestimated was that he didn't have a personal relationship with my clients, and I did. So every single one of them were never going to leave me and sign with him. And as I said, it was just an error of judgment on his behalf. I don't hold it against him, but yeah, you live and learn.
How pissed off were you at the time?
Oh, mate, absolutely fuming. I was on my holiday with Lucy. And again, probably didn't have the skills to manage that sort of intrusion and breach of trust. I mean, I'm not saying I manage it well now, but I think I'd be a bit better equipped. There'd probably be more protections in place. I mean, obviously I ended up having to get legal advice, and that ended up costing me. I didn't have much money back then. So there's a sort of, lawyer bills adds up when in an employment dispute. So you sort of, you kind of, I think I'd be better equipped to deal with it then, but it was certainly it's massively caught me off guard. And then, do you know what? As I said, I've got a lot of empathy for him. He's actually a very good agent, and to this day, he's got a very good business.
What's his name?
Jonathan Shallett.
Okay.
His company's called Intertalent. Good business, and to be fair, you'd want him as your agent because he's a proper fighter. He doesn't, he doesn't accept no as an answer, so he gets his clients' work. But probably needs to back then learn a bit more about office culture.
Tell me about Vinnie. What's Vinnie like? He lives in your neck of the woods, does he?
He's down in Petworth now.
Petworth. Is he Petworth?
Yeah, he's in Petworth. He's got a farm. Funny, I've not actually seen this there's a documentary on at the moment about his life on the farm. I've not actually seen it.
Petworth is where Seaford College is.
Exactly. West Sussex, So, I mean, Vinnie was amazing. I mean, I was so privileged. You've got to think back then. Do you ever watch Entourage?
No.
Okay, it was a TV show on HBO, brilliant TV show, and it's all about these group of lads with their mate who was a celeb, and they lived in Hollywood. And I was very fortunate to have this period of time where I was back and forth. Vinnie was living in the Hollywood Hills. I was traveling. I was staying Sunset Marquee, West Hollywood. Pretty cool time, really. We'd play darts in his back garden. Mickey Rourke, Jason Statham lived next door. So Sunday night would be darts night at Vinnie's, and I'd just be there, and all these, A-list celebs would bowl in, and it was just such a great time. And it weirdly probably didn't really acknowledge or appreciate at the time how special it was, because it was sort of. Do you remember Rhino, the old gladiator?
Yes.
So Rhino, one of Vinnie's best mates out there, top bloke. Like, he trains a lot of the A-listers. He's got a little gym out there. So
he's 60 years old. I think Adam Brooks just had a fight with him at Misfits.
Yes, he did.
Do you know Adam Brooks? We had Adam Brooks on.
Well, no, Adam's a really good mate of mine.
Yeah.
So when I saw they were paired, I called Adam. I was like, mate, do not get a ring of Rhino.
But he beat Rhino, didn't he? Yeah.
But no, so that sort of that time of Vinnie was amazing. And again, I suppose looking back now, like where I'm now, and I guess the fitness and attention to detail around sport and bettering stuff, like people like Vinnie, these were top footballers, but they also were top lads. And I didn't look after Vinnie was playing, but the sort of the dedication to the art, firstly of football, then he's had a second career that's been more successful in acting.
He's been a Hollywood star. How mad's that?
20 years.
Yeah.
And what people in the UK didn't realise is that there are hundreds of films and dramas that he's in. We'd never hear about him.
That's right.
And so he had one of the nicest houses on Mulholland.
He had a big St George's flag out there, flying out the back.
Massive pool, like loads of football. He had like a room out the back where he used to sort of play poker, the darts room. It was an incredible time, and he's such a top bloke. To be honest, when I went into the advertising business with Lawrence, Vinnie and I sort of lost touch a bit. I think he's still represented by Intertalent. So funny enough, when I ended up leaving Jonathan Shallett, I think Vinnie stayed there. But he was a great guy, and he's such a good, like, his old school mates are still his mates.
Still his mates,
Like,
it's great.
That's
a good sign.
Special. Yeah, and there's a group of lads who used to go out every summer to his place, and they're the lads he grew up with. Yeah, which says a lot.
Do you know what? I'd love to get Vinnie on.
Hey, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
I'd love to get him on.
Yeah, I'd love to get him on.
Well, I think it's only down the road.
It's only down the road. Yeah, we'll make that happen.
Yeah.
What's your world? You mentioned a minute ago the Marathon des Sables. Jesus Christ! Just Just tell the people what the Marathon des Sables is.
It's actually happening at the moment this year. So last year, it was the 37th year, and it's 6 marathons in 6 days across the Sahara.
In the desert?
Yeah, so 45 to 55 degrees, fully self-sufficient. So you carry all your own food for 6 days. The only thing they give you is water, and they put up a tent for you. Everything else you'll carry for 6 days. So you are seriously low calorie, not much water, baking hot, no shower, no running water, no toilet for a week in the Sahara.
And do you have to pay to do that?
Yeah, mate, pay a lot.
Hold on a minute.
I know, you thought it was a good business.
Yeah, I was going to say. And they pay me 20 grand to do it. Jesus, how much is it for you got to pay?
I think it works out as about 2.5 grand.
Wow. And what gives you the buzz for that? You know, we were talking a minute ago, you see, I do 100 miles a week. Listen, I get it. I can understand why you want to do it. 1, the discipline. 2, you feel great. 3, it's good for your mind. 4, you can think a lot. But why would you go and do something, that's in England, why do you want to go and do 6 marathons in 6 days in a desert?
Yeah, I think that, I mean, a lot of my running started as a form of therapy, literally, a form of cheap therapy, especially during COVID. Yeah. I found that I was quite good at it. I'm blessed with being quite slight. As I said, it's a talent of the sport, so you don't need a coach, you can do it yourself. It's quite a private sport. But I think where I started, I did a 100-mile race in 2022 during COVID. I just ran around London twice. It was 103 miles, and I did it with Jamie Peacock, the ex-Great Britain Rugby League player, and a couple of other mates. And that just unlocked something where you must have heard of flow state, which you can get when your endorphins are released. Yeah. On that race, on that run around London, I lost myself for an hour in the most angelic, hedonistic, unbelievable place. I was floating for an hour, and that was like, I need to get back to that place. And so that's the buzz I'm now searching for. But going out to Morocco was, I'd always heard about this race, a Marathon des Sables. It's quite a badass thing, and a lot of people, everyone from all over the world goes to it, and I knew that it was going to be the challenge, and I completed it. I did really well. I came 200th out of like 1,300.
Wow, well done.
Half the people dropped out, and so
just put it there a minute. Amazing.
Thank you, man.
Congrats.
Yeah, it was
that's unbelievable. 6 marathons, 6 days in the Sahara. That's just,
it was like, kind of crazy.
It's unthinkable.
Yeah, and I think
for your normal bod.
Yeah, I don't. But I'm very proud of it, but at the same time, I feel like I want to explore that more, and I think it's what it does in spades is it's training for life and resilience training, because I now find that when I do these long races, I did one in Italy a few weeks ago, which is 100 kilometers around Tuscany. And
that's more like it.
Yeah. Well, you say that it was 4,000 meters of elevation. So
okay. All right.
Exhausting. Yeah. But what I find is during these long 15-hour races or whatever, 24-hour races, you experience so many emotions. So many times you get to a point where you think you can't go on, and you just sit in the fight for an hour or two, and then you feel okay again. Okay. And then it comes back 2 hours later, and you're like, no, it'll pass. And that is so empowering for day-to-day life. I actually, last weekend, I've always had a fear of heights. So I thought the best race to enter after Marathon des Sables is called the Dragon's Back. And it's a 400-kilometer race from Conway Castle to Cardiff Castle in Wales. And you go across the top of every mountain in Wales. And I'm scared of heights. And I knew that to enter that race is a proper test myself, because I could enter another ultra marathon, but I wouldn't be scared, whereas that scared me. So for the last 6 months, I've been doing a lot of training, hypnotherapy, virtual reality training about conquering my fear of heights. And I don't know if you've heard of Crib Goch Ridge. No. So it's a ridge of Snowdon, which is basically like this. Yeah. It's a 200-meter long ridge like that. And in the race, we got to go across the top of it. And so at the weekend, I went with a group of people, and I traversed it. And honestly, it was probably I'd say one of the greatest achievements of my life. There was no medal at the end. There was no ceremony. But I was 900 meters, 4 points of contact, 900-meter drop for 45 minutes. My body, I can't explain how I felt, but I did it. And now I feel like I've just, as a person, I've advanced. That is just, for me, the power that's given me. Yeah. So when I go back there in September for the race, I'm hoping I don't shit myself and fall off, but I feel like that is another tick. And so I suppose, to answer your question, I just find it quite empowering. I know that from taking yourself out of your comfort zone regularly, not much in life scares you.
Agree.
In anything.
If you can find happiness in uncomfort, that's the key. If you can be happy in being in an uncomfortable situation, that's the key. Absolutely.
I love it.
Yeah. What are your movements now moving forwards, mate? Business-wise?
So, as I said, sold the agency a year ago, so I've been spending a lot of time with the family. We've got a 9-month-old girl, Gracie, so I'm quite hands-on.
Shout out to Gracie.
I say I'm hands-on. I am hands-on, darling. Please accept I am quite hands-on. So I'm doing that, doing quite a bit of trading, obviously. I'm non-exec of a few companies. I've just invested in a donuts business, which is quite exciting, called Urban Legend. And Ollie Horner's new gym brand I've just invested in, so helping him with a few bits around that. So I'm doing a bit of investing at the moment, but I'm in the early stages of researching, launching a product brand within sport, which I'm heading out to China in a few weeks to meet a few people. So yeah, I don't want to give too much away, but sort of, as you know, people like us don't sit still for that long.
That's right. Si, I've really enjoyed this.
Oh, good. I've loved it.
Yeah. Thank you for making the effort come down here. Certainly living an eventful life. Lots of twists and turns everywhere.
Indeed.
Yeah, you're a good man.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for your time, mate.
Nice one. Good man, Si. Cheers, mate. Hi, guys. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. Can you do us a favour and subscribe to the channel? It's totally free and it massively helps our show. Cheers, guys.